In regard to the rewards of righteousness, is there any great absurdity in acknowledging that they depend on the kindness of God, rather than our own merits? How often do we meet in Augustine with this expression, God crowns not our merits but his own gifts, and the name of reward is given, not to what is due to our merits, but to the recompense of grace previously bestowed. Some seem to think there is acuteness in the remark, that there is no place at all for the mind, if good works do not spring from free will as their proper source. But in thinking this so very unreasonable, they are widely mistaken. Augustine does not hesitate uniformly to describe as necessary the very thing which they count it impious to acknowledge. Thus he asks, what is human merit? He who came to bestow not due recompense, but free grace, although himself free from sin and the giver of freedom, found all men sinners. Again, if you are to receive your due, you must be punished. What then is done? God has not rendered you due punishment, but bestows upon you unmerited grace. If you wish to be an alien from grace, boast your merits. Again, you are nothing in yourself. Sin is yours, merit God's. Punishment is your due. And when the reward shall come, God shall crown his own gifts, not your merits. To the same effect he elsewhere says that grace is not of merit, but merit of grace. And shortly after he concludes that God by his gifts anticipates all our merit, that he may thereby manifest his own merit, and give what is absolutely free, because he sees nothing in us that can be a ground of salvation. But why extend a list of quotations, when similar sentiments are ever and anon recurring in his works? The abettors of this error would see a still better refutation of it if they would attend to the source from which the apostle derives the glory of the saints. Moreover, whom he did predestinate, them he also called, and whom he called, them he also justified, and whom he justified, them he also glorified. Romans 8:30. On what ground, then, the apostle being judge, 2 Timothy 4:8, are believers crowned? Because by the mercy of God, not their own exertions, they are predestinated, called, and justified. Away then with the vain fear that unless free will stand, there will no longer be any merit. It is most foolish to take alarm, and recoil from that which Scripture inculcates. If thou didst receive it, why dost thou glory as if thou hadst not received it? 1 Corinthians 4:7. You see how everything is denied to free will, for the very purpose of leaving no room for merit. And yet, as the beneficence and liberality of God are manifold and inexhaustible, the grace which he bestows upon us, inasmuch as he makes it our own, he recompenses as if the virtuous acts were our own. 3. But it is added, the terms which seem to be borrowed from Chrysostom, that if our will possesses not the power of choosing good or evil, all who are partakers of the same nature must be alike good or alike bad. A sentiment akin to this occurs in the work De Vocatione Gentium, usually attributed to Ambrose, in which it is argued that no one would ever decline from faith, did not the grace of God leave us in a mutable state. It is strange that such men should have so blundered. How did it fail to occur to Chrysostom that it is divine election which distinguishes among men? We have not the least hesitation to admit what Paul strenuously maintains, that all, without exception, are depraved and given over to wickedness. But at the same time we add that through the mercy of God all do not continue in wickedness. Therefore, while we all labour naturally under the same disease, those only recover health to whom the Lord is pleased to put forth his healing hand. The others whom, in just judgment, he passes over, pine and rot away till they are consumed. And this is the only reason why some persevere to the end, and others, after beginning their course, fall away. Perseverance is the gift of God, which he does not lavish promiscuously on all, but imparts to whom he pleases. If it is asked how the difference arises, why some steadily persevere, and others prove deficient in steadfastness, we can give no other reason than that the Lord by his mighty power strengthens and sustains the former, so that they perish not, while he does not furnish the same assistance to the latter, but leaves them to be monuments of instability. 4. Still it is insisted that exhortations are vain, warnings superfluous, and rebukes absurd, if the sinner possesses not the power to obey. When similar objections were urged against Augustine, he was obliged to write his book, De Corruptione et Gratia, where he has fully disposed of them. The substance of his answer to his opponents is this: O man, learn from the precept what you ought to do. Learn from correction that it is your own fault you have not the power, and learn in prayer whence it is that you may receive the power. Very similar is the argument of his book De Spiritu et Litera, in which he shows that God does not measure the precepts of his law by human strength, but after ordering what is right, freely bestows on his elect the power of fulfilling it. The subject, indeed, does not require a long discussion, for we are not singular in our doctrine, but have Christ and all his apostles with us. Let our opponents, then, consider how they are to come off victorious in a contest which they wage with such antagonists. Christ declares, "Without me ye can do nothing." John 20:5. Does he the less censure and chastise those who, without him, did wickedly? Does he the less exhort every man to be intent on good works? How severely does Paul inveigh against the Corinthians for want of charity, 1 Corinthians 3:3, and yet at the same time he prays that charity may be given them by the Lord. In the epistle to the Romans he declares that it is not of him that willeth, nor of him that runneth, but of God that showeth mercy. Romans 9:16. Still he ceases not to warn, exhort, and rebuke them. Why then do they not expostulate with God for making sport with men, by demanding of them things which he alone can give, and chastising them for faults committed through want of his grace? Why do they not admonish Paul to spare those who have it not in their power to will or to run, unless the mercy of God, which has forsaken them, proceed? As if the doctrine were not founded on the strongest reason which no serious inquirer can fail to perceive. The extent to which doctrine, and exhortation, and rebuke are in themselves able to change the mind is indicated by Paul when he says, "Neither is he that planteth anything, neither is he that watereth, but God that giveth the increase." 1 Corinthians 3:7. In like manner, we see that Moses delivers the precepts of the law under a heavy sanction, and that the prophets strongly urge and threaten transgressors, though they at the same time confess that men are wise only when an understanding heart is given them, that it is the proper work of God to circumcise the heart, and to change it from stone into flesh, to write his law on their inward parts, in short, to renew souls so as to give efficacy to doctrine. 5. What purpose then is served by exhortations? It is this: as the wicked with obstinate heart despise them, they will be a testimony against them when they stand at the judgment seat of God. Nay, they even now strike and lash their consciences. For however they may petulantly deride, they cannot disapprove them. But what, you will ask, can a miserable mortal do when softness of heart, which is necessary to obedience, is denied him? I ask in reply, why have recourse to evasion, since hardness of heart cannot be imputed to any but the sinner himself? The ungodly, though they would gladly evade the divine admonitions, are forced, whether they will or not, to feel their power. But their chief use is to be seen in the case of believers, in whom the Lord, while he always acts by his Spirit, he omits not the instrumentality of his word, but employs it, and not without effect.